Guys, and welcome to another episode of CarX Drift Racing 2 with BrogAutohaus. We are focused on the R34 Wagon today, the Stagia, I believe it's called, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. We don't have them in the United States, so I'm not 100% sure. It is called the Unicorn in the game. It's a Tier 2 vehicle, and this is with the stock motor. We're jumping right into a top 4 blitz. You're watching my first qualifying run. We're going to go through the top 4 and kind of analyze a little bit of how this thing runs in competition. And then at the end of the video here, we'll have a full tune breakdown. You can check out exactly what tune settings I have on my car and go from there. So if you're just looking for the tune, you can go ahead and fast forward to the end of the video. But I'm going to kind of analyze these qualifying runs and tell you kind of where I know I messed up and how you can adjust things to make it a little bit better. So here we go. This is run number 2. The first run that I had actually was the highest scoring qualifying run I had. In this second run here, I just had to try a handbrake entry, which did throw me a little bit narrow on that first outside zone, and naturally also in that outside zone 2. Here I was able to swing nicely into outside zone 3 without going off track and just keeping my tire right on the edge, and then upshifting to 5th gear, and obviously I sent it a little too wide on that outside zone there, and saved it towards the end to finish right at the finish line there. Not a bad run, but in that second to last outside zone, I did go wide into the grass, which does not make it very chaseable. So try to avoid that at all costs, obviously, but sometimes you just got to send it in there and hope for it. So at this point, I'm going to go as hard as possible on run 3, see if I can top my first score. Got a nice initiation, sent it out wide, got a little bit nicely wide there on the outside zone 2, and then transferring over to outside zone 3. Nice section there, upshifted to 5th gear, and got a little bit narrow there, and then had to reinitiate almost a little bit, which threw off my entire line and sent me too wide at the finish line. Now that one was only, I think, like 50 DP below what my number 1 qualifying score was, but I just figured I would, kind of show you guys all the runs through and through, because some of you really like to watch the top 4 blitzes or the top 32 battles as well. So as you can see, I did only qualify 4th in the top 4, which is not great, which put me up against the number 1 qualifier, which means that I start off with basically already around like a 3,000 point deficit, which I would have to make up by an incredible chase run. And then as soon as I hopped into this one, I realized he was running on the street tires while I had sports. So I thought maybe I'd be a little too fast to have a good chase here, but I got a little too aggressive on the initial entry and did touch his rear bumper, which got rid of my multiplier, which did not help the situation. But it is the first run, so I usually try to figure out what their line looks like, play it aggressive, but a little bit on the safe side so that you can put some points on the board and have a decent chance at trying to take him over and get the win on the battle. So he kind of does one of those spin outs at the end. I'm not a big fan of when people do that, but I get it, gives you more points. So now we're going to jump to chase run number 2. Because I wasn't that far behind him with the sport tires that I have on, I did keep them rather than switching to match his tire. I think if I would have gone down to the street tire, I would have not been able to keep up with him. Here, a much better job on the initiation, but I did get a little bit lost behind him in that transition. Just got a little too close. He really angles up before he transitions, which my car doesn't do the best here as the Unicorn, so you do have to be careful on where you're transitioning and sticking back a little further if they really angle up hard to transition. Now, obviously at the end of the race there, that was a pretty good chase in my opinion, but you can always be improved and be better in those transitions. So on round 3, I'm going to go as aggressive as possible, knowing exactly where his line goes, and try to put myself in the right positions, but sometimes that also means that you can have errors more easily. So shift into 4th gear, left myself a little more room for the transition here to try to get on his door on the left side, which I felt like I did a pretty good job of, but not quite the proximity I was hoping for. I think, to be honest, the Stagia is a little bit too heavy of a car for the competition stuff for under 600 horsepower, because it doesn't have enough power to keep up. As you saw in that last transition there, totally got sent off track and kind of pinched behind him, and it didn't pan out too well for me. So I did lose that first place, or the 4th place battle, to basically get to the championship in order to try for the 1st place position. But nonetheless, you still get a 3rd place battle. So I'm going to walk you guys through that real quick. And then, like I said, we'll get into the tuning stuff here right at the end of the video. Now I'm up against a Spectra RS that scored, I think it was like 1200 DP more than me. I kind of panicked a little bit on this one because he was running semi-slicks, and I've never run semi-slicks on the Stagia, the Unicorn here, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to maintain a drift with only, 599 horsepower on it. I did realize that the sport tires I was on was able to keep up with him pretty well. It just wasn't where I needed it to be, and he ran kind of a funky line. I ran into him here, lost my multiplier. He kind of readjusts and changes his drift a couple times, and that really did mess me up as I was trying to chase him. On top of that, I tried to here switch to the semi-slick, see if I could match him. It's run number 2, so I figured I'd try something different, see if it works. If not, I'll go back to the sports for run number 3 and just send it as hard as I can. Really nothing to lose here. I mean, you're either getting 3rd or 4th place. It's not a great position to be in, but it just is what it is. So here, as you notice, I could hardly get the thing to drift on the semi-slicks. It was just a little too much grip for the horsepower and the weight of the car, like I had mentioned before. So this isn't necessarily the best car for the top 4 blitz. I did do a Fujin SX, which is like the S14 tune for the top 4 blitz a while ago, and it was significantly better. I actually win top 4 blitzes with that car. But as you can see, the semi-slicks just weren't quite cutting it for me, so I thought maybe I'd buy some sport tires, put a fresh set on there so that they have all the grip they could possibly have, and then try for run number 3 to just send it and hope that we can maybe get on the podium to save at this point. As I mentioned, his line was a little tough to follow, but that's not his problem. It's mine, I guess. Obviously I like smooth lead runs to chase, as anybody would, but just trying to catch up to him here and straighten out, get up to the door a little bit more on him, which sent me way too wide on that outside zone. Sent me off the track. I was really trying to get enough speed to get up on him, but obviously without the semi-slicks, I don't have that, bite to save me from going off the back of the track. So overall, not a great top 4 blitz, but I just wanted to show you guys kind of how I go through them and how I look at things, because there's a lot of strategy that goes into these top 4 blitzes, and it's not always just, having the absolute best car. It's a lot to do with the tuning and all of that. So now we're going to jump into it here. We're going to show you some details on this thing. Awesome looking car. I really like it. I believe it was able to be purchased with a pass on the last event that they ran over this last weekend. And I don't think you can just normally purchase the car outside of events. So keep an eye on those events if you want to try to get this car later. So I have the R&T body kit on mine, which has the R34 front end. As you can see, the stock one there, and then the Missile, which actually I really liked the Missile kit if it would have the R34 front end, because it has those rear over fenders, the front over fenders with some nice venting and air ducting, which I thought looked really nice. The CBW is kind of like an OEM plus look, and then the R&T, like I said, has that R34 front kit. So, it's obviously personal preference. I think the Missile kit might help this car a little bit by, setting the wheels out a little wider. But I also think this car badly needs an engine swap to be extremely competitive. So, I was going to see if you could maybe switch to the R34 front end on the Missile kit, but unfortunately it's not available. So that is not an option. When you go to the tuning and you go to the custom tab here, you can click on the settings, which is the little green button on the right. That's how you're going to get into all these tuning settings. I've had a lot of people comment and ask about that. You have to have your car upgraded, and it will also, the tune will be in the tuning store under BrogAutohaus, as you just saw on the screen there. All right, so stiff sway bar up in the front, 0.08 wheel toe, almost -5 degrees of wheel camber, 13 degrees of caster, which is a very high number, but it works well with 75% Ackerman. And obviously the wheel divergence angle is maxed out, and the bumps, I don't think I've changed those on this car, so you might not need to adjust those if you're trying to copy the tune over. On the rear, -1 degrees of camber. I run that on almost every single car. 0.06 wheel toe, just a tiny bit of positive toe. The sway bar I do leave a lot looser in the rear so that we can get more grip out of the car, and the stiffness and spring size you can see there. On this, I'm running a 19-265-30 in the front and rear, both running a equal square setup. Now, if I unlock an engine swap for this car, I would probably go to a larger rear tire, like a 285 or maybe even a 305. but this car doesn't have the power to support that at this point. My differential at 0.55 with a 424 overall gear ratio. I did play with these gears quite a bit, so if you can see 3rd, 4th, and 5th there, they're at 150, 130, 110. That's a perfect 0.2 gap between each one, so that I have smooth transitions when I'm gear shifting under drift. I don't have a way shorter gear from 3rd to 4th, so that sometimes it'll cause your car to bog down or not stay in drift quite as well. So make sure those spacing on the gears are even, at least for the gears that you tend to use the most often. The axis widths is more for fitment than anything in my opinion, but sometimes it's nice to poke out the front a little bit, and it gives you a little bit more control when you're in drifting. So I did actually change this during the creation of the video. I extended my front axis width out to 6.4 centimeters. So now we're just going to get out on the track and run it around so you guys can see just the general way that it drifts and the sound. This is my favorite sounding car in the game, so I hope you guys like it too. It's that RB power. Love the sound. Love Jay-Z's too, but I'm not going to get into that battle. That's a sticky situation if you guys pay attention to Formula Drift and all the drama that's been going on around that. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I appreciate you all watching. Don't forget to like the video if you did enjoy it, and subscribe for future content so I can keep making videos like this for you guys. If you have questions or comments or suggestions for future videos, leave those in the comments below, and I'll be sure to get back to you and answer your questions. Thanks for watching. That's going to do it. We'll see you next time.